Well, that was certainly one of the races of the season. This weekend was the Spanish Grand Prix, rounding out the European triple header before the F1 circus travels to Canada, where I will have the grand opportunity of watching Ferrari disappoint me in person as opposed to the screen of my laptop. Spain was a track that I didn't have much hope for, but it ended up being an exciting race with one of the most controversial safety car restarts since that night in Abu Dhabi. On Saturday, we had an eventful quali. Leading up, there were talks of the McLaren downfall with the new front wing delegation implemented this Sunday. However, this new delegation ended up being as effective as Inter's backline against PSG. Speaking of completely the bed in a critical moment, Red Bull accidentally mixed up their Asians and put Zhou Guanyu in the second seat for qualifying. Somewhere, Isaac Hadjar ran back into the V-carb motorhome to avoid demotion to Red Bull. Joining Yuki Tsunoda out of Q1 was Franco Colapinto, who screwed over half the grid when his car wouldn't start in the pit lane. In a shock performance, Carlos Sainz joined them in Q1 elimination, completely totaling my race predictions, but don't worry, it gets worse. Ocon and Hülkenberg were also eliminated in Q1, continuing an interesting head-to-head battle in the midfield between veterans and their rookie teammates. Q2 saw Ollie Behrman, the window licker, Liam Lawson, and a promising P12 for Gabby Bortoleto, who continues to show flashes of the rookie F3 and F2 champion he was. Alex Albon also joined the eliminated in Q2, ending his streak of 3 consecutive Q3 appearances. Roll the clip. I also expect the newly fired-up Lando Norris to contest with Oscar Piastri for P2 and P3. The Ferraris and Williams will probably go to war for the second and third row. Terrible predictions aside, Q3 saw the McLarens comfortably ahead of the pack, so it was a straight fight between Oscar Piastri and Pando Porras. On his first run, Oscar slaps a 1:11.8, but Pando hits a purple sector 1 and goes 0.017 seconds quicker. On his final run, Lord Bottle forgot he was driving a McLaren in sectors 2 and 3, leading to barely half a 10th second of improvement. Meanwhile, Oscar Piastri said f it and went purple sector 1, purple sector 2, and purple sector 3 for an insane 1:11.5. 2/10 clear of his teammate and 3/10 clear of Max Verstappen for the largest qualifying gap between P1 and P2 all season. Meanwhile, Leclerc sets a time good enough for a provisional P4. The Monegasque then decides that he's clocking out and elects to save his remaining tires for the race on Sunday, a decision which left him stranded in P7 and only ahead of Gasly in P8, Hadjar in P9, and Alonso in P10. Mercedes themselves performed well. Antonelli qualified P6, while Osama bin Russell qualified P4, and just under 0.2 of a second ahead of Hamilton's Ferrari in P5. This marked the first time since China that the 7.5 world champion outqualified his Ferrari teammate. Don't mind me, I'm ducking into a panic shelter to avoid the Team LH spasgasm on F1 Twitter. So it was Sunday and everyone lined up on the grid for their 5 red lights. Well, almost everyone, because the window licker decided not to partake in the main race after wanking himself too hard the night before. It was too late to get reserve driver Felipe Drugovich in the car, so Aston only rolled out with Alonso in P10. Aston Martin released a statement that the spastic had suffered wrist complications from his surgery back in 2023 from the biking accident, which means that Drugovich could get a shot in 2 weeks' time at the Montreal Grand Prix. F1 gods, if you can hear me, this season has been so but if you could banish Lance Stroll forever, I will never ask for anything again. Except for maybe a win in Monza. And Leclerc 2026 champion. And cue the 5 red lights and everybody scrambles into the first corner. Piastri seemed to learn his lesson from Imola because he got off like a rocket ship and pulled 0.8 from P2 by the end of the first lap. The same can't be said for his teammate who handed Verstappen P2 and gave us all something to look forward to in the race. Meanwhile, Pando cosplaying as a snail forced Russell slightly wide and gave way to both Ferraris by the end of turn 5. Meanwhile, in the midfield, Williams got off clumsily as both drivers suffered front wing damage by the end of the first lap, giving James Vowles violent 2024 flashbacks. Eventually, Alex Albon suffered damage again on lap 26 after Liam Lawson jihads it straight into his front wing, forcing Albon to retire the car because he would have ended up so far behind it was barely even worth it.
Break everything. This is an opportunity you'll never have in your lifetime. Break everything.
Ferrari, on the other hand, decided to let their drivers duke it out for P4 and P5 for a couple laps. After realizing that Lewis Hamilton was going over 1 second a lap slower than the McLarens in P3, they inverted the cars and Leclerc immediately pulled a multi-second gap. As the race progressed, it became clear that the two-stop strategy was the most viable. Teams quickly adjusted to using only medium and soft tires. Given that the Red Bulls are extremely tough on their tires and the fact that Verstappen was pushing it like a quali lap for the world title, Red Bull elected to try a three-stop strategy to keep the McLaren pit wall guessing, which ended up working brilliantly. The top three remained as Piastri, Norris, Verstappen for a majority of the race, and credit where it's due, Max was giving it everything to make sure the McLaren stayed in sight. The race was a slow burn through the middle components, save for some midfield action for the lower top 10 positions. Eventually, the race came to a turning point when Verstappen took his third pit stop within a lap of Piastri and Norris, giving the trio a fresh soft tires with about 20 laps to go. We got a great moment where Lawson and Behrman cosplayed as Lance Stroll, blocking the leaders from racing wheel to wheel, nearly taking Verstappen and Norris out. Unfortunately, that near incident was all the action we got for the next couple of laps, as McLaren were able to pull just out of Verstappen's DRS range, and Sky F1 were due to make their regularly scheduled potential chance of rain with 15 laps to go. But we didn't need those idiots, because instead we got a safety car. Kimi Antonelli pulled off into the gravel with a power unit failure at turn 10. W Antonelli for making sure these races stay entertaining. So now everybody scrambles into the pits for fresh tires, and Charles Leclerc looks like a genius for saving his tires on Saturday. Most drivers have to resort to slightly worn soft tire or staying out altogether. Red Bull tried to fit the C1 hard tire on Verstappen, which is about as effective as wet tire in these conditions, or no tires at all. On the safety car restart, Max had a huge moment on the exit of turn 14, which could have ended his Grand Prix right then and there, but that opened the door for Russell and Leclerc to blow past him on a vastly superior tire. As Verstappen fumed on the radio, continued to get worse for the Dutchman when the team ordered him to let Osama bin Russell pass in fear of a penalty, leading to the headline moment of the weekend. I will get to this moment in a minute, but what I will say for now is that this entire situation was completely avoidable if the Red Bull pit wall didn't have an actual nervous breakdown. As the final laps waned, Nico Hülkenberg whisked his Ferrari wheelie bin past the struggling Ferrari of Hamilton. So Oscar Piastri converts his pole position into a fifth race win of the season, extending his lead in the championship to 10 points over Pando Porras, who finished P2. Charles Leclerc rounded up the podium, with Russell in P4, and a shocking P5 for Nico Hülkenberg, who secured huge points for Kick Sauber and propelled them to P8 in the constructors. Further down the order, the rookie Fernando Alonso finally scores points for Aston at his home race, finishing P9. The biggest winner of this weekend undoubtedly has to be Piastri. With the race win and Verstappen's nervous breakdown, he pushed his gap to almost 50 points and can now solely focus on outperforming his teammate. McLaren seems to be unfazed by the front wing change, as it hasn't affected the car's pace nor their tire deg, which continues to be absolutely unbelievable, especially in the clean air. Ferrari and Charles Leclerc performed exactly as needed this weekend, hauling in 23 points this weekend and vaulting themselves to P2 in the constructors. Kick Sauber themselves had a strong weekend as well. Gabi has given promising results in quali, and Hulk was able to magic his way into another point-scoring position for the second time this season. As Audi begin to work their way into F1, they at least have the cushion of two talented drivers at their disposal, potentially shaking up the midfield going into 26. Williams... Run the clip again.
The Ferraris and Williams will probably go to war for the second and third row.
I should have been more reasonable with Williams heading into this weekend. While they have definitely proven to be a pest to the top four, especially Ferrari and Mercedes, I overestimated the progress made to this point and grotesquely overlooked the team's struggles in Catalunya over the past 5 years. This weekend was probably the worst case scenario, as the team failed to score points for just the second time this season, and they burned through 3 front wings thanks to midfield terrorism. Red Bull's weekend went from decent to dog shit in about 15 seconds. I haven't seen this level of incompetence since prime Ferrari in 2022 and 2023. The 3-stop strategy was a masterstroke by the pit wall. And while the safety car was admittedly not ideal, I cannot, for the life of me, understand why they didn't just stay out until the end on the soft tire. They were already planning on running those tires to the end, and they were 8 laps old. And they didn't even have a replacement tire. The C1 tires heat up slower than my mile time, and you expect Max to fight and overtake the McLarens on fresh, soft? Big brain Hannah, you lose your big brain for this bullshit. For f***'s sake, Max has a championship under his belt because Ferrari kept leaving Leclerc on hard tires. I understand Ferrari making this mistake. In fact, I expect it, but I never would have expected this from a team like Red Bull. You're telling me you trust Max behind the McLarens in dirty air on the C1 instead of him in fresh air on slightly used softs? So obviously Max is sliding around like he's on slicks in a monsoon and immediately cedes P3 to Leclerc after a huge moment on the exit of turn 14. As Max continues to drift his oversized miniaturized Mario Kart down the straight, Osama bin Russell jihads it down the inside, and the two make contact. Max is forced into the runoff area. It somehow gets worse, because Max keeps P4 by the grace of God, but Red Bull have so little faith in this tire that GP, God bless this man's soul for being the middleman in this absolute travesty, goes on the radio and says to give the position back. This would be a reasonable thing to do if Max had actually left the track and gained an advantage. However, seeing as Max had literally no space and was forced wide, he initially refuses to give up the position before GP convinces him to do so. Then he slows down and it looks like Max is about to let Russell pass. Then Max realizes that this is Osama bin Russell we're talking about, and he remembered the bullshit from last winter, and decides, nope, I'm not giving you back this position, you latte drinking cunt. And goes full send straight into Osama's side pod. Max, what in the actual hell are you doing?
Oh my God, call the police!
So that's a slam dunk 10-second penalty, and Max finishes P10. But it gets worse. How does it get worse? I'll tell you how it gets worse. Because in the FIA's official documentation of the incident, the stewards literally write out that they were not gonna penalize Max for leaving again. So the gap widens to nearly 50 points in the driver's title, and God knows who could drive that second car, so the constructors is a wash. We must now prepare ourselves for Max running car number 33 next season, as Red Bull enters crisis mode. The new delegation they spent the winter complaining about did jack to help slow down the McLaren, and Max basically DNF'd at a track where the car has won several races in the past 5 years. It seems preposterous to say out loud, but it seriously looks like we might have a new F1 champion this campaign. But I refuse to count out Verstappen until he's mathematically eliminated. This was certainly a memorable send-off to the Catalunya circuit, as we take a week's break before heading to Montreal for the Canadian Grand Prix, where I will be live watching Ferrari crush my hopes and dreams while we bear witness to another McLaren 1-2 by 15 seconds. May Michael Massey help us all.
Lotus, Lotus, Lotus 72, D. Lotus, Lotus, Lotus 72, D. É máquina do tempo e na velocidade não tem igual.